Hi, I'm Haley, and I decided to focus on stereotyping and communication for my communications project. I think this is a very important topic because all of us stereotype and all of us communicate on a daily basis. On the screen, there are two text bubbles. Go ahead and read them. As you can see, the first one says women are blank. The second one says men are blank. I'm sure most of you guys read that as is with the blank and all in the sentence, although I guarantee there are at least a small percentage of you that filled in those blanks with stereotypes. Whether it's women are beautiful, men are strong, or whatever, I guarantee at least a few of you filled those in with stereotypes. What is stereotyping? Do you stereotype? Stereotyping is when generalizations veer too far from reality. They become stereotypes. A woman called Alexa Bolu wrote an article in the Tampa Bay Times, it's a local Florida newspaper, and she claims that stereotyping is the mind's way of categorizing the world. She also claimed that stereotyping is an automatic and universal reaction to create categories. This happens when we see an unfamiliar person or an unfamiliar idea. We view people in a certain way, and stereotyping affects how we view people because we put these people in groups and therefore we view them as in those groups as opposed to an individual person. Oftentimes, stereotypes are traits such as race, sexual orientation, gender, age, physical ability, occupation, etc. That came from the Encyclopedia of American Immigration. Stereotypes can be positive or negative. I will get a little bit more into that in just a second. First, let's look at this photo right here. It has three people, a woman and two males. The woman has writing above her head that says terrorist. This is likely because she has been stereotyped. She's been put into the category of a terrorist because of her skin color. Perhaps she's Muslim. She is wearing a hijab, and so a lot of times those characteristics are associated with terrorist. Instead of her being viewed as who she is, she's viewed as a terrorist because people have stereotyped her. The second one is a guy that says, I'm not a color. It's easy to assume that he has been called a color. He has been put in the category of color instead of, again, who he is, what his name is. People are calling him a color, and so he's fighting that stereotype. The third one is a guy that says, I will not cut your grass. A common stereotype, fortunately for Hispanics and Mexicans, is that they are landscapers and that is what they do. So perhaps he is Mexican or Hispanic, and people have made this stereotype that he landscapes and he cuts grass, and he's saying, no, I will not cut your grass, I will fight your stereotype. As I mentioned, stereotypes are when generalizations veer too far from the truth. This affects communication because one's desire to communicate can be abrupted by stereotypes. For example, if you were talking to a friend and you just overheard your friend stereotyping someone, you may not want to communicate with them anymore because you may assume that they are going to stereotype you, and that's highly possible. And it's not a good feeling to know that you are being stereotyped. You're being put into a category instead of being viewed as yourself. So overall, stereotyping affects communication because it may prevent somebody from wanting to communicate at all. They may not want to be honest. They may fear being honest because they may fear that they will be stereotyped. As I mentioned, stereotyping can be more positive or it can be more negative. Typically, it's more positive for weaker members of a group. They may feel that a stereotype makes them more than. They may feel that that benefits them because they might want to be associated with a certain stereotype. And by stereotyping them, they feel associated with it. Or overall, stereotyping can make someone feel less than. That's typically what it does. Negative bias contributes to a negative life. Therefore, stereotyping is negative because it makes people feel less than what they are. Here's all my sources. I went ahead and included the photos because I think that's super important. my final message is that try to be mindful when you are stereotyping. One of those things, it might be hard to completely stop doing, but acknowledge when you do it. When you view somebody and your brain links them to a certain characteristic or a certain group of people and you are stereotyping, acknowledge when you do that. Think about that. And then overall, don't say stereotypes out loud because you may scare people, you may harm people, you may hurt people's feelings and make them not want to communicate with you. You may be preventing important communication from happening because you stereotype, even if it wasn't directly to somebody. Somebody else could overhear it and feel like you are no longer a safe person to talk to. Be mindful. Um, that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys have a good night.